What's up guys, Doomsday here, and today we're back with another special video. In this video, I'll be showing y'all my tier list for the jungle for this patch, but I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I'm going to be showing y'all a tier list for both higher tiers and lower tiers. And I think this is big because I know a lot of people have put tier lists out there for jungle, of course, but I haven't really seen any tier lists for lower tiers, and I think that's a mistake since the metas are very different for both higher tiers versus lower tiers. So I'll put the timestamps in the video for both the tier lists, and you can skip ahead to whichever one you want, or you could just take a quick peek at both and see how the metas are different. And I'm considering lower tiers to be about mid-emerald and below, and higher tiers to be everything above that. And if you enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe on the video, and y'all have been killing it lately. Like, I don't think I've ever grown so fast before, so thank y'all for that. And if you want to see some good jungle gameplay, I have a ton of gameplay on my channel if you want to see some of these champs in action. Or if you want a really in-depth jungle guide, I have like a 40-minute jungle guide, which I uploaded like a week ago that I made on my channel. And I'll put a link to that in the description if y'all are interested because it has gotten a very good response so far. So now we're going to start off with the tier list for high ranks. And first of all, this tier list is for my opinion, of course. Everybody's opinion varies a bit, but in my rank for Grandmasters jungle, this is the tier list that I think is relatively accurate for almost all higher tier matches. And to start off with, I'm going to talk about the first two champs on this list, and those are going to be Lee Sin and Rengar. These two champs are easily the strongest solo carry champs in the game at the moment. Lee Sin has always been strong for pretty much as long as I can remember at this point, and especially with the latest patch, with both Herald and Drake spawning at 4 minutes, the mobility, ganking, and really strong early game that Lee Sin has, it fits super well into this patch, because this patch has been even more snowbally than ever, and games are being ended earlier than ever before. And then there's Rengar, and he's really been picked up more this past patch, especially with the new crit items. He's one of the few junglers that actually has benefited from the new items that came out the last patch. And overall, it's allowed him to scale into late game better, and I just completely think he could one burst any ADC, which makes him pretty broken. Now, the next champ I want to talk about for one reason. And he's the only champ that's going to be in S+ tiers for both lower tier and higher tier ranks. And that jungler is going to be Xin Zhao. I honestly think Xin Zhao is probably the best overall well-rounded jungler at the moment, and a big reason for that is he does well into a lot of these other assassins that are meta at the moment, and two of those being Lee Sin and Rengar, of course, which I just talked about. And his early game is insanely strong, which is important to have this patch because, again, matches are being decided early in higher tiers. And he has really solid clear plus good ganking, which makes him a good choice because compared to other champs which might have weaker ganking, he can actually gank pretty well, plus he has really good skirmish potential, fighting for these scuttles, etc. And another reason why I chose to add him in S+ tier for both high and lower tier ranks is his ease to play. And I think this is huge because he's definitely the easiest champ to play out of anybody in this S+, S, or even A tier list, in my opinion. And anybody can learn how to play him. Plus he's super strong, which I think makes him really, really good at the moment. And I want to talk about his role for a bit. He has an insanely strong early game, of course, but then as the match goes on, his damage does start to fall off, and your role transitions to becoming a tank. And a lot of people might find this problematic because in the very late game, it is hard to deal damage with him because he's mostly a single target focus compared to other AoE champs that can completely burst down entire teams. But I think the biggest thing people overlook on Xin Zhao are the early game objectives, and if you play those early game objectives wrong and it scales to late game, of course you're going to fall off as Xin Zhao, but I think Xin Zhao is super strong at those first few drag fights, and getting those buffs is important for early game focused champs such as Xin Zhao, because those are buffs that are going to help carry you through the late game as you start to fall off. But now I want to talk about some of the changes that have come with the latest patch and with the new crit items that have been released and how they have impacted two of my favorite champs in the game that I used to play so much. Both Wukong and Vi. Those two champs, those were my two most played champs, but now I almost never play them. And let me give you all the reason for that. With the new crit items and changes to the meta, tanks have kind of become less relevant in solo queue because now it's even harder to kill these ADCs, and they have broken builds now just because of these new crit items. And that takes away from the main point of champs like Wukong, Vi, Olaf, which are looking to engage these ADCs for a while and to 1v1 them pretty much. Oh, and I realized I forgot to mention this earlier on, but this is a solo queue tier list. This is not a competitive tier list. That tier list would look very, very different. But I want to briefly just touch on Jungle Riven. I honestly think it's a very slept-on pick, and I think Riven in general is slept-on because I think he's super strong right now, but people seem reluctant to play him. And along with other champs like Pantheon, they just have different play styles that you have to get used to once you start to play them, but both of those champs are really slept on in some regions like EU and NA, but overall they're pretty strong. But one thing that you might want to notice is that most champs that take a while to scale rank low on this tier list. And that's because of how fast-paced and how soon matches end again, such as Gragas, Amumu, Mundo, Rammus. All these champs rank low just because they don't have the impact early game, which you need in this patch. But that's going to be it for the higher ranked tier list, and now we're going to get onto the lower ranked tier list. And I want to talk about this for a second, but if you can master any of the champs that are like S or S plus tier on the high ranked tier list to a very good level, you can easily climb up because those are the best champs. But when I'm making this lower tier list, the things that I'm considering are like decision making and mechanics that an average lower tier player might make. And that's why certain champs like Lee Sin will rank way lower, because they take a lot of practice and skill to actually hard carry on. But the biggest difference between higher tier and lower tier metas is that in lower tiers, scaling champs have more value, such as Mundo, Tryndamere, because matches are not closed out as fast, just because there's a lack of focusing on objectives in the lower tiers, and there's more running around and doing pointless fighting. And there's something a lot of people fail to realize when you are constantly fighting. So let me give you an example, just because examples make things easier. Against a Vayne, who is a very OP late game champ, and you might be thinking it's good if you're always fighting them, because you're abusing their weak early game. But trading kills for kills, the same amount of kills for the same amount of kills, is not good, because in reality, what you're doing when you're constantly fighting and just giving up kills and trading kills is you're hastening the speed of the match. With all these kills going around, people are going to get gold faster, meaning late game builds will be reached faster and faster. And instead of being patient and picking good fights, which is what happens in higher tiers, which is why scaling champs aren't as good there, late game builds are going to reach faster, and these late game champs that want to scale are going to become more relevant. But one champ I want to mention is Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix is, in my opinion, the best champ to climb out of lower tiers if you can play him right with his isolation damage. And Kha'Zix is like what all the higher tier players play is when they want to smurf out of these lower tiers, just because Kha'Zix has such good carry potential with his isolation damage. Oftentimes in lower tiers, people don't really know about Kha'Zix's isolation damage and how to avoid it, which almost doubles Kha'Zix's damage and makes him broken since he can deal good damage at all stages of the game. Now, the problem lower tiers might make with Kha'Zix is going in at the wrong time, because he is relatively squishy, and if you don't get your isolation damage off, you're going to be almost useless. Instead, you need to be more patient, wait for the right opportunity to use your jump once you find somebody isolated, because your jump is your main mobility, engage, and escape tool, and using it carelessly will make you die more often. Now, let's see, I already talked about Xin Zhao, and I honestly think he's a very, very good choice for anyone in any tier to play. And then Tryndamere and Graves. These are two other junglers that benefited from the new crit items that have came out lately, and that's huge because very few of these junglers actually benefit from those new items, compared to like all the ADCs that benefit because now they all got new builds. But both of those junglers are really strong, and now they scale super well too. And Fizz is still strong in all tiers too because of his one burst potential, and he's another solid one trick to learn too because most comps do lack ability powered damage, and again, his one burst is just super toxic to deal with. And then, as you can see, Mundo and Rammus have both risen up a lot too, and that's because they can get to late game more often in these lower tiers, making them pretty much a complete monster. Now, I want to touch up on Vi. The reason why Vi moved up so much for this tier list, compared to the higher tier one, is she has an insanely fast clear, she has really good ganking, and her ult is almost a guaranteed free kill. Plus, the big thing is she's another easy champ to play for lower tiers, like Xin Zhao, compared to somebody like Evelynn, which might be a bit more tricky to play. And the reason why this is huge is because it's normally easy to find good ganks in lower tiers and to slowly pick off kills, and that's going to lead you to getting fed, and pretty much any champ when fed can hard carry. But I just wanted to touch up on that. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the tier list, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Comment down below if you disagree with anything, have any comments, share your opinions. I'm more than happy to listen. And that's going to be it. I'll see y'all in the next video.